Well, good evening and welcome. It is so great to see so many people here tonight. I want to thank you all for being here to learn about the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, or RAISE, projects, and for being part of the collaborative process of improving our community. The projects being discussed tonight are part of an initiative to increase connectivity from the Millyard through South Elm Street area all the way to where Queen City Avenue meets South Willow Street. With help from Manchester Connects, we've been able to engage local community leaders, business owners, and residents through every step of the planning process. It was essential from the beginning to connect these neighborhoods in a way that would enable residents, businesses, and visitors to more easily come together via many forms of transportation, including by foot, bike, car, bus, or train. We're really hopeful about that train part. Last year, the city was awarded a $25 million RAISE grant by the U.S. Department of Transportation. It was the highest amount granted to any city in the country. And with a match from the city of $5 million, we're investing $30 million into the city of Manchester, our community. It was a true team effort every step of the way. Our federal delegation worked extremely hard to help secure this funding. Manchester's Department of Public Works, Planning and Community Development, Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and others put in countless hours and collaborated toward this common goal. In particular, I'd like to recognize our DPW representatives here tonight. Director Tim Clordy. Where are you, Tim? In the back. Deputy Director Owen Friend Gray. And our traffic engineer, Kristen Clark. Along with our engineering and planning partners, Fuss and O'Neill. They'll take you through a presentation that outlines the key elements of this project, which include a pedestrian bridge, I have to say, one of my favorite parts of this, roadway extensions, multimodal bridges, pedestrian and bike trails, and an innovative peanut roundabout, which will work in tandem to make our transportation corridors safer, more walkable and bikeable, less congested, and a key building block in a larger plan to create economic development and address the city's housing shortage. The larger effort, part of our 10-year Manchester Master Plan, includes more than 1,800 housing units, nearly 1 million square feet of commercial and retail development, and more than 150 new hotel rooms. Tonight, we're presenting the progress to date, and once again, soliciting your public input. That's how this connectivity infrastructure project began, with the coming together of many people who want to improve Manchester today and for generations to come. I'm proud of the work that's been done so far, and I'm really looking forward to your feedback tonight. Together, we will continue to raise Manchester, bring people together, and create a brighter future for all. So now I'd like to turn things over to Kristen Clark, the city's traffic engineer and the project's main project manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for everyone coming tonight. So today we're going to go through an overview of the project, talk about the different components, talk about some of the conceptual design elements and what the impacts of those may be, and then we'll finish off with some public comment. We do ask that we keep all comments till the end so that we can get through the presentation. So, as the Mayor mentioned, the Department of Public Works is administering the project with close collaboration with our local Federal Highway Division, and we have selected a highly qualified consultant in Fuss and O'Neill and their project team to help us get through the design of each of these elements. So, as the Mayor mentioned, the main project area is what this in this white box here, which is south of the Millyard in downtown, runs through the South Elm Street corridor and connects to South Willow Street. So we're really trying to build on some of the success that we've had in the areas to the north and use infrastructure to create new redevelopment potential to the south. So anyone coming down Granite Street today knows there's many reasons you can run into a bottleneck and traffic congestion in that area. If a train is coming through, it can completely stop east-west traffic. If someone hits the pedestrian button to activate the exclusive pedestrian phase, it can activate up to 40-second pedestrian phase. And anyone going to the ballpark, there's only one way in and one way out. So anyone going to Southern New Hampshire University facilities, the ballpark, the condos, the hotel, they all have to come back out through Granite Street. So what we're looking at doing is extending South Commercial Street over the railroad tracks to reconnect this area of the city. So as we've mentioned, and I'm sure you heard in the other room, some of the main project goals are to reduce traffic congestion, to increase vehicular and pedestrian safety, to increase bicycle and pedestrian connectivity, and to leverage private investment in infrastructure to make redevelopment attractive. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our consultant team to go through how we got here and where we're going next.
Thanks, Kristen. Good evening, everyone. My name is Arnold Robinson. I'm a planner with Fuss & O'Neill, one of the lead consultants on the team here. And I'm going to take you through the process of how we got to tonight, how we got to the designs that you're seeing, and really what we want to hear your feedback on, because context is really everything. Everyone in this room comes to this project from a different point in time at which you first heard about it, participated in it. We want to make sure you get a full picture about sort of how we got here and what this project is. So it all really started in 2019. Even before that, as Kristen said, identifying problems was the first thing. Where were there bottlenecks? Where were there disconnects in the transportation system? Where were there places that were unsafe for crossing for bikes or peds who were out there in the environment? And all of that came to a great discussion in 2019 in the spring when there was a design charrette, and 80 stakeholders came together, different organizations, different advocacy groups, elected officials, citizens, people, business owners, all got together and looked at this project area and said, there's some big things happening out there. There's the Capital Corridor project going on. The city's doing its comprehensive plan over. There's all these opportunities, but where are the disconnects and what can we do about those? So they talked about those key factors. They talked about what they saw as the key challenges, the key disconnects that were out there. And all day, this professional team worked with citizens to sort of come up with good ideas. And we put those all up on the wall and then sorted through those and said, what were the top priorities? What made the most sense to reconnect different parts of Manchester to each other? And really, there were two concept plans that came out of that at that initial workshop. These were sketches that were actually done at that 2019 charrette by the team. And the first one, which was the essence of our 2019 application to the feds for this kind of funding, was what we called the expanded downtown scheme, and is on the top and really sort of has the ability to support a future rail station, a transit hub right in that area, has the ability to have more housing, connects some of the streets that are missing their connections up to Elm Street, but had an at-grade crossing. So really key, the rail lines run through there and cut it off. And so that had sort of an at-grade crossing. As we moved forward for the next 2 years of applications for federal funding, the biggest feedback we got was, can you do it with an above-grade crossing that separates vehicles, pedestrians, and bikes out of the railroad corridor and reconnects to the rest of town? And so that's the new district scenario that's on the bottom. And that's exactly what went forward into our federal grant applications. And I think that's a really important theme, is that we've stayed true to those initial ideas that came out in our design charrette. The other thing that happened during the initial charrette, but also during our whole process of the grant applications, was collaborating with other agencies. This wasn't just DPW or just the city. There was a lot of partnership going on here. So as I said, this integrated with the transit-oriented development plan in the sense of where did they have goals that might mesh with these funding goals. Really important partner was the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, which was with us every step of the way. But it also ties into the whole Capital Corridor project for rail, ties into the Transit Authority, which has a facility in this area and needs to be integrated. And works with all sorts of regional planning and local planning as well. So there was a lot of work over 3 years to make sure this worked with everybody's goals. And so all of that led to this application to the federal government, to the U.S. Department of Transportation, for what is now known as a RAISE grant. For the couple of years prior, it had been called a BUILD grant, but I think it's important to recognize this is a program that's been around at USDOT for about 20 years. They were called Tiger grants for a long time. And what they're looking for is really critical. It's not a typical grant. And so there was a pool of 1.5 billion available in the 2021 round. The city put in a very competitive application, and the key is they're looking for surface transportation infrastructure projects that have a significant local or regional impact with a focus on job creation, job maintenance, on really enabling people and communities economically, improving safety at the same time. I call it sort of a jujitsu grant. You have to do 5 things all at the same time and flip it. And then the other key is it has to have innovative transportation technology built into it, and it has to address racial inequalities that have been around for a long time and build in climate. All these were things that the city was doing at the same time anyway. It was a great fit for the grant. There was also community support. 60-odd organizations supported the grant application as it went in. Many had participated in the charrette. Many are abutters to the property areas and own parcels. And they were enthusiastic participants. And as the mayor said, our elected officials were critical in getting this forward. So I think it's important to boil it down to what is this project about? And there is an official phrase called the Statement of Purpose and Need for the project. And it's to mitigate congestion, improve safety and connectivity, and especially east-west connectivity for multiple modes of travel. That's really the key. And so it's for vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, and the actions are new roadway connections, new bicycle connections, new bridges, and new pedestrian infrastructure to do that. And you won. That's the amazing part. You won the biggest grant in the 2021 round of any municipality for $25 million, which is pretty huge. And the great thing about USDOT is they tell you why you won. They give you feedback. And the feedback we got was that safety was one of the top ones. This scored very high on separating rail traffic from vehicular traffic, on increasing bike and ped safety. All those were great things. But it also looked to the future and what might be your multimodal rail connections, what might be your broader regional connectivity that you have. And it was directly tied to measurable economic development in all your comprehensive planning and all your transit-oriented development planning. And those numbers all went in as part of the grant narrative. So that's why you won. These elements of the project were all in place for this grant application. And we're going to next take you through those 4 project elements that make up the Raise Manchester project. And I'm going to introduce Linda Greer, who's the project manager.
All right, I get to talk about all the fun stuff. This project has 4 different separate components, and together they meet the goals that are outlined in that purpose and need statement. This slide shows how those 4 elements connect together. The yellow line, starting where Fisher Cats will dead-end cul-de-sac there, and then it has a roadway that extends and connects to Elm Street at Gas Street. The pink dashed line provides, that's back behind Fisher Cats Stadium. That will actually provide a connection down to the Riverwalk trails. And then the orange line is the Gas Street extension, an active rail corridor that connects from Elm Street to Willow. The pink dashed line is the active transportation corridor. This is a fancy words for basically a rail trail. It's the abandoned rail corridor that's through there. And that would then connects down to South Willow. And then South Willow, we are going to reconfigure the South Willow intersection to make that safer. And then the last one, and also a favorite for a lot of people during the charrette, is a pedestrian bridge across Granite Street. So I'll explain each one in a little more detail. All right, so this is a picture that shows you the area of South Commercial Extension. And you can tell by those 2 red lines, the only way to connect those 2 is somehow get over the rail line. That South Mill Yard, it has barriers. It's got the river on one side and the rail yard on the other. So no real choices there. And then this shows you the layout of the road that we're proposing. It actually has 1 lane in each direction, but it also has an 8-foot sidewalk. So that can be used as a multi-use sidewalk. So you can ride your bikes on it, push your stroller, and walk. And the whole road is an above-grade crossing, which will give traffic relief when, like they've explained, when a train comes at Granite and Canal Street. In fact, it only takes 2 minutes of that train blocking that crossing to get traffic, not just to back up at the intersections, but all the way to exit 5 and up onto the ramps. 2 minutes, not too long. The average train right now that goes and uses this is 106 trains long, and it goes no more than 20 miles an hour. So you can imagine 106 trains, 20 miles an hour is going to take a whole lot more than 2 minutes. So there's times that the whole downtown is gridlocked because of those trains. Let's see. So the one thing that this road does, though, also, it gives a relief valve for if there's a train. It gives somewhere for those cars on Granite Street to make a right and get out. It also gives an access for emergency vehicles. If there's a blockage on Granite Street, they can't get there. In fact, the design of this reduces the emergency response time in half. Not only for the South Mill Yard, but also for properties up in the Mill Yard area. And then I already told you about the multi-use trail to the Riverwalk. The road will take also traffic off of Granite Street. It takes off about 400 vehicles in the PM peak. So this is a rendering. This is also in the other room. This is just a rendering of what the bridge will possibly look like. So the next element is the Gas Street extension. This, again, is a picture from above of the existing configuration, so a lot of pavement. There's no real good east-west connection between Elm Street and Willow, all the way from Queen City Ave, all the way down to Valley. So this would give a nice, quick east-west connection. Pedestrians. One thing, I'm going to try to use this little arrow so that it can show you. Right here is actually a little beaten path that already pedestrians are using to get from Willow over to Elm Street. So the roadway, I'll go to the slide with the road. The roadway that we're proposing will have a 5-foot sidewalk, so the pedestrians can use that to get over. And then we will do the active transportation trail is the pink that's underneath. There will be a switchback down from the trail to get up to the parking lot level or the roadway level to get out to Elm Street. With the trail networks that the city already has in their plans, one is going to be constructed this spring, and I think another one is going to be constructed. It's all in final design and be constructed soon. But by the time this project comes to be constructed, those will already be in place. So with this little piece that's missing in the middle, you will actually be able to take a designated trail from the airport all the way to downtown and Elm Street. Be pretty incredible. And then there's still even more trail connections. There's Derry, Londonderry, Wyndham, Salem. So once this comes in, you can go from the Massachusetts line all the way to downtown Manchester. Great way to people for start commuting to work on their bikes.
Tell which streets or which.
Oh, yeah, so, yeah, it is a little difficult. So, oopsie, wrong button. Right here is actually Elm Street. And then this street that runs across the top is Willow.
But where,
This-
where on Elm Street and Willow?
Okay, yep, so this building right here is the factory up on Willow. And then this is the Sunbeam Mall, and right here, this little building right here is the Red Barn. And this is a rendering that shows, well, I probably should have just got to the renderings because that might have answered your question a little easier. This is a rendering that shows what the bridge would look like that would go over the trail, and then also what the switchback could possibly look like. And then this is a rendering that shows what it would look like with the road connection. So the next element is the Willow Street and Queen City intersection. So again, looking from above to see what it looks like. And it really looks more like a highway ramp system than it does a city intersection. There's concurrent movements that kind of don't make sense when you first, go through there. There's long queues that happen because of the signal at high speeds because the wide open ramp system there. It is a pretty high crash location. There's approximately 30 accidents per year there, and we do know one fatality that's happened because of speed. So this is what we've come up with to solve our solution solver, which we call the peanut. But what a roundabout does is a roundabout, because of the way that the curves are done and the size of the curves, it reduces speed. And reducing the speed helps reduce the accidents. We also have reduced delay because we know this will have no signal. The signal will be removed. With the signal removed, you don't have cars sitting there idling, and therefore you have reduced emissions. This also today, if you're out there and you're a pedestrian, it's very disconnected. You can't get from one place easily to the other, and there's some places that it's hard to cross. So this has connected sidewalks all the way around and crosswalks. We're working towards designing and figuring out what approaches may need, some kind of pedestrian signal to increase safety. And then I just want to let you guys all know that in the other room, if you didn't get here prior to us starting, there's displays up of all of the things that are here, but there's also simulations of the peanut in there. So one that shows kind of from above, and it shows how the cars would migrate through, and then it also has a 3D image from the driver's perspective. What would it look like if I was driving it? So it's pretty cool. So please stop by and take a look at that. And then I want to let you know that this isn't the first peanut in New England. It's been done before. This is Kelly Square in Worcester, Mass. This was constructed in 2020. So you can see the chaos that they had prior, right, in the existing condition. And then things got a little bit more ironed out with some good pathways. I can tell you that the existing condition, before they put this in, there was about 18 accidents per year at this intersection, and the crash rate has dropped by 60%. And then there's one more, it's not done yet. They just put a shovel in the ground and are starting construction. I found this very interesting because it sure looks a whole lot like ours when you look at the two plan views. This is in New Haven, Connecticut. And let's see, just like Manchester, speeds were really the issue there at that intersection. The intersection experiences about 50 crashes over the past 4 to 5 years. So they, of course, are looking for a reduction in their crashes and a safer situation. This is the intersection of Chapel Street and Yale Avenue. It's very close to Yale University. All right, and then to everybody's favorite, the pedestrian connection. So it's a long ways to walk across. I guess we don't have things up there that say which road is which, right? So this is Granite Street, and then this is South Commercial, and this is Commercial. This is Gateway Park area. So it's 110 feet to get across from one side to the other for the north-south crossing. As Kristen said, it's an exclusive PED phase, and so it takes about 40 seconds for that phase. That means all cars are sitting there at each approach. All cars have emissions going, right? So putting this in, much safer for the pedestrians for the crossing. It takes that exclusive phase out and provides that time that you would be sitting there to go and allocate to the other approaches. So it's going to decrease the queues that are out there. It's going to decrease delay, and it's going to decrease the time that people are sitting and the emissions. And this is a quick rendering. It gives you a peek of existing and then proposed. We're still working through all the details, so this is still very conceptual, but this is an idea of what that would look like. And I've already ran through those improvements. And then here's a look from the top so you can kind of see the ramp configuration. Again, we're working through with environmental issues of the park. For Gateway Park, we're really looking to have those ramps kind of integrate into a park look. And then, of course, with property owners. We really thought it would be nice to give tribute to the Notre Dame Bridge, so we are envisioning the arched bridge. So here's, two pictures, and it's going to be a prefabbed bridge, which means it'll all be constructed and put together at a factory, and then brought out and put into place, and then the ramps built. So, and then the picture up there with the steps and the ramp. Those are ideas of how it could look, possibly for more of a park feel. All right, so project schedule. So the RAISE grant comes with some requirements. And there's two requirements. Those are the big bold ones. One of them is all funds need to be obligated by September 2024. The other one is all construction needs to be completed by 2029. So the other bullets are our plans, our plan of attack, right? So we're targeting to get through preliminary design and have that completed this February. And then we're targeting to have this coming February, 2023. And then we're targeting to have final design done, being done from March to December 2023, to get authorization to bid in early 2024. So why early 2024 when we said that funds didn't need to be obligated till September 2024? Well, that's because we live in New Hampshire, and to bid a project in the spring, we would get better cost estimates and cost prices if you bid it in the winter, and then they're ready, because they only have such a short, construction season. Construction season's, April to November. So you want to put the project out to bid when it's off construction season, right? And they're hungry and they want the work for the next season, and then they're ready to go that next season. So that's what we're shooting for, that's what we're trying for, but we absolutely have to meet those federal requirements. All right. Oh, I have one more slide. Yep. Then I turn it over. So project impacts. So we do not have in this project any displacements of any businesses or any complete takes. We do need to acquire some right-of-way. We do need to be able to establish our new roadway. There's places that there's no road there today, so there's property owners for that road, and we need to be able to get the rights for the road. We'd have permanent easements in places also for sidewalks, for some of the retaining walls possibly, and for drainage needs. And then we'll have temporary construction easements, because it's gonna take space to do this construction, right? And that's gonna take more space, and, you know, we gotta have space to have the stuff there to put in the ground and to build everything. So there will be some temporary construction easements done so that we can get the project built. But really, for all those 4 elements, the property impacts are pretty small. Alrighty, I'm gonna turn it over to Arnold.
Thanks. So we really like to, you know, the property impacts are fairly direct and to only a couple of people. One of the things that's important though is we let you know about what we go through for a process for looking to impacts for the community as a whole. And so because this is a federally funded project, there's a lot of coordination for that. There's a lot of making sure what the impacts are and sort of mitigating those impacts if there are impacts. So on the left is a list of all the things that we will be going through from a project review standpoint for what we call environmental, which is framed very broadly. And that's natural resources, which we often think of, but also historic resources are part of that. Land development is another category. Is this in keeping with the local community's land development regulations and future plans? Noise, both the construction side of things and future operations. What are the impacts of that? Air quality, environmental design. How does the bridge work within the urban landscape is another factor. And then demographic character changes, displacement, employment and income patterns. What's the impact of the project when it's built? What happens with it? And so the other thing is really community services and facilities. You're often looking to say, is there a school that's impacted? One of those impacts, for instance, is to improve public emergency responders access. So that would be under that category. And then we also look at flood disaster protection, stormwater, other water factors. So that's all built into what we do as we're designing, we're looking at what are those impacts. I want to drill down into a couple of those that are very common issues that we see, but also might affect Manchester. So first is we're always thinking about natural features in the project area. Our environmental phase 1 report, which is sort of that, no digging, but you're researching and you're understanding what's out there in the landscape. That report is complete, and what it shows is this is an urban environment that has been redeveloped many times over its history. So it's what we call urban fill in terms of soils types and development types. There is some contaminated groundwater. The biggest factor out there is water that is on the edge of the railroad right-of-ways in those old drainage swales that are along the railroad corridors. And so that's one factor that our stormwater design will take into account. Soils, we map all soils to look at what they can bear. Can they take a bridge? What's their load-bearing capacity? What's their drainage capacity? And it's really, loose and compressible soils in the railroad corridors. And you may have seen some drilling rigs that are out there in the world. That's part of this project, assessing those soils where there's a project element that's going to be constructed. We need to understand that in detail of what's out there. Endangered species. Even though it's an urban environment, you still want to look for seeing what's out there. There's an accessible database that's used. There's a lot of great inventory that's already been done about species and where their populations are. Our initial search within the New Hampshire resources show that there are no records of endangered species within our project area at this point. There's no floodplain impacts that we see. No protected shoreline impacts, being an inland site. And no unique natural features or agricultural land, which can also be a factor when you're reviewing projects. We do want to note the wetlands that are out there. They are what we call emergent wetlands, which means they're sort of man-created that are out there. And so those photos really give you a good sense of alongside the rail beds off to the sides, where for really decades and almost over a century, water has been going off the side of that rail bed and collecting becomes a wetland. And so that's out there. So we measure that, we map that, we look at what that extent is, and then we overlay our plans on that and say, what's our impact? When we build that new multi-use rail trail that Linda described, how does that impact the wetland? And then how might we mitigate that when we do our project design in terms of what we plant out there and how we handle stormwater to sort of mitigate that impact. Stormwater is another factor where obviously this is a sloping site. Many parts of this project area have slopes. That large image, which is a working document, is the sort of stormwater analysis mapping, which shows where stormwater is moving, which shows what some of the infrastructure is that's out there. We know that we'll need an alteration of terrain permit for this project, also an MS4 permit, which is related to stormwater. The good news is that the few wetlands and things that we're going to impact, and then where the stormwater is flowing, we're going to be aiming to do 90% of treatment of that stormwater. So a lot of our infrastructure in this area was developed in a period before there were stormwater treatment, and so it's very basic. We're going to be able to do things like have good detention ponds, have deep sumps to handle overflow, be able to do green infrastructure like tree box filters or other rain gardens that are out there in the field depending on soils types. So we'll be able to do a lot more innovative, up-to-speed things with stormwater management out there as part of our project design. And lastly, because we're in an incredibly great historic environment, is to assess what are the historic resources that are out there, where does our project overlay those historic resources, and what might be the impact. So it's rather hard to see on this plan, and our project website will have this image as well on it. And so here is Granite down here. Here's Bridge Street. Most of the historic resources that are either eligible for or listed on the National Register of Historic Places are north of our project area, sort of further north in the city. We do have a part of the Amoskeag Mill District that comes down and goes onto Gateway Park right here. This is that intersection with Granite Street. And so that is a direct impact to a part of a National Register district. And so we'll go through a full review of what our impacts are. We've had 2 great discussions with New Hampshire Historic Resources Division about that. So that's another part of our review process that we go through. We're going to be opening up for public comment in a second, but I wanted to linger on this slide for a little while. You have much of the same information on your agenda, so don't feel like you need to write it down, but you can. But one of the things is tonight is a part of this discussion. The mayor described this sort of 4-year process we've been on with this project and pulling this together. And this is going to continue all through the project. So tonight is not any kind of an end of comment. So we really want to note that there is a full project website out there that you can go to. We'll be posting information as it becomes available on project design, on different things that are happening out there in the field and doing updates. And so you can keep in touch. But one of the most important things is the questions and comments email. And so folks can post directly to that email address any questions they've got or recommendations or comments or I like this and don't like this. We want to hear back as we continue through the project. And so that's your chance to send that back. We aggregate those once every week, and then we'll try to get back to folks with responses to questions. We'll take in all the comments and put those into our process. Because we're continuing over the next year to engage in the design. We also have a hotline, and we are urging folks that if you don't necessarily have easy access to a website and you want to leave a message for us about the project, leave a question. We're aggregating those and getting back to folks every 1 or 2 weeks while we answer all those questions and develop more information. And your questions are also going to drive what shows up on the website for frequently asked questions. So we can give answers to everybody. You might have a great question that can help everybody understand the project more. So do think of this as a beginning tonight. So we've reached the part of the evening where Linda's told you about the project, Kristen's told you about the sort of the city. We've shared all this information with you. And we want to get your public comment. And we're going to do 2 ways of doing public comment. The first is we absolutely want to give everybody who wants a chance to stand up here in the auditorium and give us your reactions, positive, negative, anything that sort of comes to mind about the project. We want to hear those things, and we'll be writing notes and collecting those. As you do that, if you're going to do that here in the room, we do ask that you give us your name and address, and if you're representing an organization, what organization that is. And share that. We've got a lot of people here tonight. So one thing I'd like to do, if it's okay, is to sort of have a 3-minute rule. I don't want the first 2 people to each take 20 minutes and then we all have to go home. And so if possible, I'd like if you can sort of synopsize your comment briefly with sort of a 3-minute goal in mind, that would be great and would give other people a chance to share their thoughts as well. But I also want to recognize the fact that not everyone is comfortable standing up in front of 125 people. And so the other thing that you can do is, if you don't want to just send us an email, if we've got time at the end after the comments, we're going to be back in the room with all the exhibits, with all the posters and displays, and we can take comments that way too. We'll put Post-its up on the posters. We'll capture all those ideas, and you may feel more comfortable doing it one-on-one with one of our project teams. By the way, everybody on a project team has these funny name tags with the Raise logo on them, so you can find us and you can talk to us or share your comment or your suggestion as you go on. So I think what I'm going to do as MC for this meeting tonight, or for the question and comment section anyway, is to ask that folks sort of put their hand up, and I'm going to sort of, point hands out. Do your 3 minutes, and we're going to capture the information. We're going to be taking notes as we go. We'll try to get through as many folks as possible. I do want to note, final thing, the library closes at 8. So I want to be respectful of the staff and allow them to get home to their families as well. So we will, at about 7:45, start to close up. 7:45, we'll close up. So we've got an hour to sort of do these different kinds of feedback. So with that, you were first in the front, and I'll be as fair as I can in picking people and trying to keep note.
Hi, I'm David Marston. I live in Hooksett now, but I go through Manchester most every day. And most of my concerns and questions have already been addressed, but I do have concerns about New Hampshire Route 3A, which is right on the borderline of project area and will certainly be impacted. Given the zigzag nature of 3A, you need to analyze southbound and northbound separately. Southbound is easy. You're coming across the bridge. You take a right for 1 block on South Elm Street, and then, bizarrely enough, a left over to Baker, and then another right 1 block later onto Califf Road. Right now, the traffic is fine. It's usually doable, but with adding more traffic onto Elm southbound from the Commercial Street extension, and you're taking traffic off Elm Street southbound with the Gas Street extension, so there's a puzzle there about what's going to happen to the viability of that southbound move on 3A. Northbound is really the problem. You're coming northbound on Califf Road, you come to a stop sign where you can see right in front of you 1 block away is a nice convenient connection right into the Peanut Roundabout area, and yet you can't get there. You have to take that left onto Baker Street for 1 block, then you take a right onto Elm Street northbound for 1 block, and you may not be able to take a right on Red if the school's in session, and then you finally get onto Queen City Avenue, getting into all the current mess there. So can we do something, at least for the northbound people on 3A, Califf Road, perhaps using the Baker Street stub or using the Califf Road stub, to have them as a 1-way move onto Queen City Avenue eastbound and alleviate the backlash. And whatever solution can be devised for the people who are northbound on 3A and want to go anywhere else in Manchester, that's a bonus. Thank you.
I'm going to go there next, and then we'll go down front.
There's no question in my mind that eliminating the traffic signals where the turnaround is going to improve the air quality. We're going to have less cars at stop signs, and that's a vast, vast improvement, no question about it. But there's another aspect to the environment, and that is actual the visual environment. And I'm concerned from past experience that this not being in downtown, where it would get cleaned up, where brake dust, trash would regularly get taken care of because there's a special allotment for downtown. This is not in the downtown, but yet a lot of people are going to be going there. And it's going to attract trash, brake dust, people throwing things out of their car. And I would like to see the Public Works Department, who should be a piece of this, do what they've done in other sections of the city and commit as part of this project that it's going to be taken care of and it's going to be cleaned up, be it through Public Works or one of their components, the Parks Department, Parks and Rec, whoever it is. I would like to see that tied to this project right up front so that we know it's going to be a beautiful area not just on paper, but actually as we drive by it. Thank you.
We'll make that commitment today.
They made the commitment.
The director of DPW. All right, I want to keep it civil. Yes, ma'am.
As a handicapped individual in Manchester, I travel sidewalks and roadways via my electric chair. Especially on a nice day, spring, summer, fall, I love going out in my electric chair. More fun than going in the car sometimes. However, the sidewalks are really bad for electric chairs. There are so many bumps and places where you can't get around anything, tree, bump, whatever the surface is, cracks in the sidewalk, the ramps, in and out of the street, whatever the case may be. I would like to make sure that the sidewalks that you have presently are worked on, taken care of, and repaired, because they're terrible, and then the new ones that are put in are also taking into consideration people like myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
You have to do ADA.
Go there next, and then I'll. Yeah, ma'am.
Hi, hello everyone. Mariana Beer. I'm the property manager of Packard and Willow. I'm not here in any capacity as far as what the factories surrounding the area is related. I just have a question. I didn't see in the renderings any lighting in the pedestrian bridges. So I'm wondering about lighting, make sure that those areas are safe and secure. And also questions about proper snow maintenance, ice and salt, pretty much on those pedestrian bridges. They can make them pretty dangerous if the slope is icy and if there's black ice everywhere. So just about that.
Those are good suggestions, and yeah, lighting's in process, but we always want to hear more about that folks want to see good lighting. All right, that side, Chris.
So I have some notes here. I'll keep it short though. So my name is Griffin Davis. I've been a Manchester resident for 6 years. Live on 465 Ring Street. So just want to say thank you first of all for putting this all together and at least taking into account some pedestrian improvements. I do have some comments overall. One quick piece of context is very into cycling, but I'm sort of that 1 percentile of users who's comfortable mingling with cars, which is not most people. So with that in mind, I do just have some comments about each project. So first of all, the Granite Street pedestrian bridge, great that you're moving pedestrians out of the way, but I'm a little fearful that that's kind of just prioritizing cars and sort of saying pedestrians, hey, you have to take this much longer path to cross the street. I don't think that idle times, like environmental concern, is really justified because you're still prioritizing cars, which is not great for environmental impact. If you wanted to mitigate that, you should increase the usability of other modalities, which is seen throughout the project in the other areas. As for the Gas Street extension, and actually both with the Granite Street, the pedestrian paths, the ramps have 90-degree angles, not really conducive for cycling. If you ever have tried to take a dime, quick turn on a bike, doesn't work out very well. Also, it looks like because of the pedestrian path only being on one side, I have a little bit of a concern over intersections. So when you're forced to go and use one side, and then coming out of that intersection trying to cross the street, just the visibility of seeing pedestrians and cyclists from that angle. For the South Commercial Street extension, I mixed them up. Sorry, for the Gas Street and the bike rail trail, great to see that. I was curious and I have a question about what happens when that hits Queen City Avenue, and if there's going to be intersection, because I believe that rail trail continues from there. And as for the Peanut intersection roundabouts, again, if you're okay intermingling with traffic as a cyclist, roundabouts are actually much easier to navigate. But again, I'm the minority. Most folks, families, kids, just people who cycle casually or want to start commuting, I don't see any cycling paths or bike paths or separated bike paths there, and I don't think most people will be comfortable riding in between cars, even if it's an improvement from the previous intersection. So I just kind of want to take that into account. If I have any more comments, I'll email you, but those are my main concerns. Thank you.
Okay. Other hands? Oh, sorry.
Hi, my name is Jason Sukup. I live 2124 Elm Street in the city. I lead an organization called Manchester Moves. We've been working on the rail trails for 15 years, so we're really excited to see this project come and bring these trails together. So thank you for all the work that's gone into it. Of all the things that we see that could be better and absent in this plan is a connection over Queen City Avenue. So, you know, these rail trails are about to be developed in the next year, couple years, and currently there's no plan to get over it. So right now it dead ends, as the speaker talked about. We're gonna have towns from Londonderry, Salem, many towns coming all the way up because the rail trails are connected in those towns, and they'll be connected here. But I think we go on the road, and then there's some street options, but it's not clear how we should cross Queen City Avenue. If we had all the money in the world, I would say build a bridge there. We've had some designs, and so we know that it's possible because of the length on both sides of that. You don't have the zigzag. So I know we don't have all the money in the world, and you've already got at least 5 bridges you're thinking about. But there's also really good at-grade crossings with like an arm. A train used to cross there. You can still do something really good to make it so even kids can cross. We've been riding down Elm Street the last year with 10 to 20 kids every day, twice a day to school. And it's largely been okay with barely any infrastructure, just a painted bike lane. It's largely been okay because there's not that many cars from the arena to Queen City Avenue. It's pretty quiet and sleepy right now. This new thing is designed to bring more cars. It's designed to put more cars on that road. For that reason, you gotta make sure that that rail trail is done well. That segment that's right in front of the factory needs to be done well. If it's not connected, you might as well throw it out because it's gonna become another homeless corridor in the way that some of these other 1 mile segments that go nowhere have become. If it is a thoroughfare, the problems go away. We have a lot of problems in this city with these park zones that don't go anywhere. And if we've got thoroughfare, good, healthy traffic going through, your Tuesday nights will be a lot easier. I promise you that.
I saw that hand first, over there, yep, and then we'll come back over here. Yep.
Okay, Amber Nicole Cannon, I'm on 84 Brook Street, and I am another disabled representative. I have been in a wheelchair, and I will probably be in a wheelchair again, but most of the time I'm getting around on my feet and with a cane. The pedestrian bridge needs a much lower grade, and snow removal, I love the city, but we're not great at it on the sidewalks. The sidewalks are rarely cleared in time, and I have to use them, so I'm mostly walking, biking, or rolling on a wheelchair in the bike lane, because they do get cleared. So if we want to encourage pedestrians, bicycles, all types of wheels on this bridge, it needs a heated sidewalk. Like, let's be really honest. It's the only way it's gonna stay clear enough for that people with any type of mobility challenge or being pushed into a stroller, right, that includes caregivers, to be able to get up and over. In addition, I really like your point about those hairpin turns. That's just not gonna work. It's also very hard in a wheelchair. Hold on, I have notes too. I promise I won't be long. Managing it conservatively. If you want, well, one, let's say state law, right, is that bicycles should be on the roadway, whether you're comfortable or not. Until that changes, we need to make sure that the road accommodates that. I am also comfortable in the roadway, even though I'm also on an adaptive bike. So, with the renderings showing bikes on the sidewalks, those kinds of things, we need passing space, even if you have bikes on those on the sidewalks. It's also very confusing to the drivers when bicycles are seen on both the sidewalk and the road. And we kind of need to keep it consistent so that bicyclists don't get hit or thrown at. I get a lot of things thrown at me as I cycle. So if it does end up that you're really encouraging bicycles on this path, you need to make it considerably wider so that bicycles going in different directions can pass each other. Also, while pedestrians and people pushing strollers or with mobility aids can also get by at the same time. I don't think 5 feet is anywhere near as wide enough. I think you're talking a considerably wider passage. Otherwise, I want to say I love this, sounds really great, but I just think that we need to rethink some of those parts. I'm very excited for the project.
I just want to make one note. The South Commercial Extension is an 8-foot wide sidewalk. So it is the wider sidewalk. The only sidewalk that runs along the road that is the 5-foot is the Gas Street extension. And we are pinched for space there. We have certain parameters we have to stay within, so that's as wide as we can have it. But we have, the rail trail is down below, which obviously is wide. I think it's 12 feet wide. So I just wanted to mention, the South Commercial Extension does have the wider.
Okay. We'll go here next, and then we'll go to that.
Tom Christensen, formerly of Straw Hill. I'd like to build upon our two cyclists and also what Jason was talking about. Very simple thing, I passed it on to you earlier, I just wanted to say it publicly. If I understand the laws of New Hampshire, a sidewalk, you cannot ride a cycle on, a bicycle. But the term side path, that is 5 feet or greater, you can. And I just encourage you to change, everywhere you have a sidewalk of 5 feet, make it, 4 feet, I'm sorry, make it 5 feet or wider. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, I'm just gonna go there next.
I'm Florian Power. I'm a resident, and I'm also part of the Queen City Bike Collective. And well, Queen City Bike Collective, you'll kind of know where my comments are going to go to. So I had a few thoughts about, I guess first the footbridge, where on that intersection currently the sensors do not pick up bicycles. If I'm sitting on Commercial Street and I want to get to South Commercial Street, I'll wait the whole day, and I'd have to wait for a car to drive up behind me for the light to change. The only way I could safely get to the other side is through that pedestrian signal, or again, by having a car just follow me. So by removing that pedestrian signal, that gives me two options of either carrying my bike over that bridge or taking some really sharp turns around long ramps, or just running a red light, which both are not great solutions. So I would really encourage you to maybe rethink the way cyclists interact with that bridge, because I do think it's a good idea to provide more pedestrian and cycling infrastructure in that intersection because it's awful currently. But the current solution also doesn't sound like it would necessarily fix problems. The other part is, my other thought is on the Gascous connector, where we have great walking paths in the footbridge by the river down by the stadium. And we have the bike lanes that also Manchester Moves uses on Elm Street, and we are now kind of connecting that whole area, where I would really like to see and encourage that the whole area is connected with cycle lanes and sidewalks that accommodate everyone who would like to use it. I think the 8-foot side path is a really good idea to start, but also to make sure that that is continuous from one end to the other to provide a safe way for pedestrians and cyclists to get from one end to the other and not suddenly run into a place where the sidewalk just ends and then they have to continue for like 300 feet to get to the next lane, right? So those were my
Thanks.
My name is Mary Lizzie, and I live at 144 Bleecher Street, and more with cycling and more with pedestrians. I live on the west side, and I was noticing with the pedestrian bridge that there doesn't seem to be accommodation for people who live on the west side to walk to the east side. I already experienced this as a problem when I walk to SNHU to work. The bridge does not get cleared nicely in the winter, and it's convenient for me that I can cross on the other side of the bridge before I go back. I can't necessarily do that depending on where I live. I might have to cross the street in order to get to pedestrian bridge. And I can't figure out from the illustration whether there's any sort of accommodation for pedestrians who are continuing to be on the wrong side of the bridge. And I do have to echo the people who walk, the people who are walking, expanding our energy, we're out in the weather, and now we have to go longer distance to go up and over. It doesn't necessarily look to me as if it's accessible to everybody. And also, I have used that pedestrians, the stairwell on Bridge Street, and that always is dirty and smells of urine, and I'm very concerned about putting all this money and energy into something that's at the gateway of the city and having it disgusting. So those are, I have some other comments too, but I'll put them aside for now. Thank you.
Over here next, and then we'll go around.
My name is Alan Rumney. I also live on the west side, so this whole thing doesn't affect us. But I was wondering, at the Phoenix area, are those sidewalks elevated? I don't think so, but if you get the answer. And what's going on with the statue on Commercial Street? Is that just a ramp? Is that all that's going on there? And is the student statue going back in that area? That's about all I have.
I'm not sure what you mean. Can you clarify what you mean by the statue? Oh, the mill girl.
The mill girl.
Mill girl stairs? Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. It is, yes.
It's going back?
Yes, yep, the stairs, we're making that ADA compliant, so new stairs and a ramp.
Yes, and then I'll work with it.
I'm Luke. I commute every day from Queen City to the Mill Yard via Commercial Street across Granite. I usually bike or walk, and that Granite intersection is pretty awful. I'm worried about kind of with like everyone else, bicycles. Again, we're probably not going to go up over the bridge on a bicycle. One, you're not allowed on the sidewalk, and then two, like everyone mentioned before, winter, it's just going to be not a great time to go over that. So staying on the road, again, the sensors don't see a bicycle, and so if we lose that signal, I could be there for a very long time in the morning before I can get across. And then also coming back in the other direction, so again, crossing back south across Granite, it gets pretty dangerous there because of that turning lane. No one even listens to the don't turn on red currently, and so now if you remove pedestrians going across Granite, it's going to be really dangerous to cross that if you can't use the bridge if you're a bicycle and you can't get the light turns for you. So most of that traffic.
I will add that we currently are just signing a construction contract for our adaptive signal project on Granite Street, and with that will come upgraded detection for the signal movements. So we will work with the contractor to make sure whether it's cameras or radar, they can detect bikes better than the loops.
Great.
Your best chance on the loops is being like 3 feet off the lane line. If you're directly over the loop, even though you can't see it, it has a higher probability of sensing the metal of a bike.
All right, good to know. I guess just one more thing is that if you are walking, is there going to be a pedestrian signal to get you back across Commercial, on South Commercial, or on North Commercial? Because essentially, to use the pedestrian bridge, you're going to have to cross over, go over the bridge, cross back over to get to the bike path to go on the west side. So, just a question on that.
Yes.
My name is Garrett, and I live on Torrey Road here in Manchester, and volunteer with Manchester Moves as well as work at the Elliott Hospital and ride my bike when I go to work. Echoing the comments that many have made already, starting maybe with the Granite Street one, since we were just talking about that, it seems like the bridge is a nice kind of arch gateway into that part of Manchester, if you're thinking that West Manchester is not Manchester. But other than that, it seems kind of, to me, like just throwing that down there and hoping that it's going to magically solve problems instead of addressing that intersection comprehensively. As people have mentioned, crossing east-west instead of north-south, that bridge doesn't, unless you're going to make a series of bridges. Or anyway, so trying to just curious if there would be a better kind of comprehensive plan for that intersection, whether that's a roundabout, whether that's more bridges, whether that's just really addressing all the needs of users at that intersection instead of just envisioning this beautiful bridge will solve that, because it seems to just solve east-west for mostly pedestrians, not not bike commuters. Maybe if someone has their, if my kids are with me, maybe we'll go around and go up on the bridge. But if I'm trying to get commuting to make this long loop and then go over here, it's not conducive for travel. Again, echoing Amber's comment on the sidewalk, 8 feet is still not enough for bi-directional bike and ped and wheelchair and stroller transportation on a sidewalk. 8 feet is quite narrow. If you go down on some of the rail trails south of like the Dairy one on any sunny day, I think that one is 10 feet wide or 12 feet wide, and that's still wide enough to accommodate bi-directional travel. I know in Seattle where we came from, a lot of the bike lanes are going to 20 feet wide from 12 or 15 because they couldn't really actually accommodate bi-directional travel with multi-mode use. So just looking at that Gas Street Extension sidewalk as one piece of that, highlighting that it seems like that whole project is car-centric with a little bit of jargon thrown in for bike ped. Not actually solving bike ped or multi-mode active transportation there, but just a few pieces of jargon and nice diagrams saying, oh, we're addressing it, but not really addressing it. So hoping that that would really address that. One thing that came to mind was, would that actually just be for larger events and then therefore be one direction lane of travel for vehicles that would be signalized like you see on express lanes or other places in metropolitan areas where, okay, when the event's starting, prior to it, it's one direction in, one lane, and therefore wide enough to accommodate other bi-directional travel with active transportation, and then when an event is ending, one lane out. I don't know if that's the best option there. And then again, Queen City Ave, that's that kind of missing link piece, and there's plenty of space for a bridge there where that bridge really does solve a problem. So I would advocate for, instead of putting a bridge that doesn't seem to completely address Granite Street, let's put a bridge over Queen City where it basically takes care of that crossing of the major bike ped corridor, active transportation corridor there. So thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Brendan Wesser, 6 Taylor Street, which is the corner of Silly Road. So I'm very interested, especially in the Peanut area. I will echo comments and thoughts of what other folks have said about the bicycle. That I do feel these plans look like we are prioritizing car travel, and that the bicycle and pedestrian plans are more for recreation instead of actual commuting and getting around the city. I took a look at the Peanut area before coming in, kind of to pass through and we asked some questions, or somebody else. We were asking questions about where do bikes go in this plan, and it was like, well, maybe on this shared path sidewalk. Well, that area connects with some of our lower income areas over if you continue on Willow Street and if you continue on Beach Street. So those are coming to South Willow Street. And I felt a little uneasy that the answer was, well, maybe this can be a shared path. I have concerns about sidewalks and shared paths. Most people don't know the difference between the two or the continuity between the two. So I do echo the continuity problems of if we have an 8-foot path or a 10-foot path, but then all of a sudden there's no sidewalk, or there is a sidewalk and you're not supposed to be biking on it. So I would hope that going forward there would be something that speaks a little bit more to the commuting that happens via pedestrians and bikes and not just recreation, which is absolutely important, but we are a city and we need that commuting option as well. And then my other comments, which I will probably email as well, we talk about in the bullet points for the proposal, racial equity. But when I look around this room, I really hope that we're doing proactive outreach to communities of color in the city to get their input on this as well. That's it. Thank you.
James Baio, 427 Holly Avenue. I was formally involved in the development of the transit-oriented development plan, which envisions something like 1,800 units of residential and 1 million square feet of other types of development in this area that kind of sits south of the Gas Street extension. And so I'm very excited to see this project advancing because it really makes the probability of building out that area as an urban environment much more likely. It's going to facilitate the TOD plan, which is a really good thing for the city. I would say that there are some questions I have about the process, the planning process going forward. My understanding typically is that there's a design development phase, and that might happen for each one of these individual components of the project, where design alternatives will be considered and then a preferred alternative will be selected. Will that process be taking place, and if so, do we know the timeline for that process?
We're currently in it, is the way I phrase it. We're currently looking at alternatives, and that's why we've been talking to different groups about different alternatives.
Great, okay, so I have some ideas about design alternatives I'd like to share with you guys, and I will do that. One I just want to mention publicly that I think is really important is the roundabout or peanut about at Silly Road. I think there's an opportunity to put housing in the middle of that, and so I drew up a concept plan, and I'll leave this with you guys, for 120 units of residential, over 80 parking spaces, and 8,000 square foot of retail fronting on the center of the oval. And the idea behind this is to make better use of the roadways that are already there, to maximize the land that the city controls, and to add uses in a space that otherwise would be unoccupied and might turn into a derelict space. Additionally, the tax base that's generated from putting this kind of programming in the center of the roundabout could be used by the city through a long-term lease to help offset the cost of maintenance and operation for the facilities we're looking at. For example, if a project like this was developed and the city started seeing tax base, it could use a tax increment finance district to pay for the pedestrian crossing that would connect the South Manchester Rail Trail from one side of Queen City Ave to the other. And so, thank you.
James. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I was just listening to everybody talking. I would just like to ask, I forget who it was, somebody said about the plow snowing on sidewalks and roadways, and also around the pedestrian buttons. If I'm on the sidewalk and I want to cross the street and I can't get to the pedestrian button because it's 2 feet of snow, I'm screwed. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi there, my name is Bryce Cowu, and I had a question. I wanted to follow up on what the gentleman said earlier about the sidewalks at the Peanut. So I would like to suggest a consideration of raised sidewalks that would be at the level of the sidewalks that would be connecting to, essentially, so that pedestrians don't have to go down on the street and back up. I think that could serve multiple different things, including speed mitigation for folks who are going around, because there will no longer be traffic signals. You might have some folks who would want to try to speed around, even if there are curbs. Having additional, little mini speed tables could serve many different functions. So thank you.
All right. Yes.
Yeah, Stan Bonner, retired from Manchester Fire Department, and I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to come here tonight. It's a very important project. Now, over the years, as this was being built down there, I myself noticed there was an awful lot in that area on a dead-end street. Residential, ballpark, all kinds of things. A dead-end street. Okay, nothing was ever done about it. So therefore, tonight, we're seeing a really, really great step forward. Why this wasn't done before this is way beyond me. Totally unsafe. Totally unsafe. The other thing, one of the biggest points I'd like to make, I almost got flattened tonight downtown in the crosswalk. A girl was texting. And, I'm lucky I'm here because she was like a foot away from me, full board. Okay, I thought she was gonna stop. I had the walk light, wasn't happening. So I'm thankful to be here. Now, on that road, okay, anybody can go down to Elm Street. Right now, or a lot of other places to see. The lighting is disgusting. It's terrible. There's some lighting on Chestnut Street that's out in front of some merchants' businesses. And apparently those lights have been out for quite some time. This is on Chestnut between Amherst and Hanover. I was told that there was a 2-month back order on light bulbs. Really? So my point is, moving forward with this nice big project, it'd be really, really nice to get some good design going for fantastic lighting and something to really, really protect the pedestrians and handicapped and everything we're all about. Okay? Good lighting, not like the lighting we have that we bought for downtown Manchester now. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, it lives in Manchester. You go down the street, they come down Hanover, full bore, go around the corner, tailgate and everything, okay? And we try to impress the people to take it easy, because there's people in crosswalks right on the other side of that turn. In the dark, okay? So better lighting, okay, and markings and everything. Down in Florida, they have the, well, over on the west side, over by Winter Street, somewhere in that area. They have a setup where if you're in a crosswalk, the lights will blink and everything. That's fantastic. We really need better lighting in Manchester and more protection for pedestrians and the handicapped. Okay? Thank you very much for being here, everybody. It's really good project.
Yes.
Hi, my name's Don Waldron, Bedford Street. I'm also with Manchester Moves. You know, we're really expecting to come here tonight and really have to fight for bike and pet advocacy, but it seems like the audience is doing that for us, and it's really an amazing thing to see how many people are here voicing support for that. This strikes many people as primarily a transportation project. I would just like to stress that transportation isn't about moving cars and trucks, it's about moving people and cargo. And in a built urban environment like Manchester, cars aren't necessarily the most efficient way to do that. If it was, we probably wouldn't need this project. So please keep that in mind, that bikes and walking, but for me, bikes is a viable transportation network. I look at rail trails as the highway system of bikes that have off-ramps onto bike lanes on the city streets, which are those last mile connections, so people can get to their homes and get to work and get to stores and restaurants to do their daily business by way of bikes and not have to worry about parking downtown or other traffic means or whether the train's coming or whatnot. Although you probably still want to worry about the train. As you go through this, I would encourage you to still look at ways to embrace bike infrastructure. For example, the shared use path over the bridge is not a concept that is universally accepted. You have 1 to 3 mile an hour pedestrians intermixing with 9 to 15 mile an hour bikes. That's not a good combination. Having physically separated areas is a normal design standard that's used throughout this country and should be embraced here. So I would encourage you to opt to embrace the concepts of the federally mandated or federally standard of complete streets whenever it's possible for this project. And they've really laid out a lot of bike and ped infrastructure that is accepted as safe means of separation between cars, bicycles, and pedestrians. And then my last comment is, assuming a lot of this was priced out in 2019, 2020, have you accounted for the inflationary pressures that are in the year 2022 and going forward, and how will this project strategize cuts or when the actual quotes come? Thank you.
And I will say, it looks like, because I think the hands are beginning to slow down a little bit, you'll also have time, I think, to go to the tables in there and talk with people one-on-one. So some of the questions you brought up, we may be able to dive deeper into. But I did see one more hand up. I want to go. Gary again?
Yeah, just one comment that I didn't hear somebody else mention that is really, I think, really important, is talking about kids and getting around and what we are setting up for the future. So I work in the hospital in the ER, and then my real passion is seeing people actually become healthy. And several people have said, well, then don't work in the hospital, work in zoning and planning and DOT, all this stuff. So thinking of, if we actually build the infrastructure for kids to walk and bike to school, if we build infrastructure that feels both safe to parents, teachers, all those who care about kids, then that starts those habits early. If we build infrastructure that, as several people have mentioned, is only safe for the 1%, 2%, 5%, whatever, who want to do it themselves as adults and take the risk, then we won't see this. In the Netherlands, what started their journey towards the happiest children in the world was kids getting hit walking and biking to school and dying, and then finally saying, look, we're not going to build car-centric design. We're going to build not just bike-centric or pedestrian-centric, but children-safe bike and pedestrian-centric design, which also cuts down on the budget schools have to spend in transporting kids around in vehicles. So just really wanting to advocate this idea that if we actually design for that, you know, generations from now, people might be looking back and really being appreciative versus if we still focus so much on cars, maybe not. Thank you.
And I'm just going to jump up at the same time because I can't not. But Elizabeth Sukup, I'm a pediatric surgeon at the Elliott. I work with Garrett. I'm on Manchester Moves. And I'm a bike bus mom, which means I am the bike driver of 20 kids to school every single day. And it terrifies me. I literally pray myself the whole way to school and the whole way back because I have paint that keeps 20 kids safe from cars. Amber's been on the bus with us. Joyce sees us every day. And I have a lot of emotion about this, that our kids need a strategy. They need a way. And whether we call these rail trails or highways, I'll take a rail trail any day over going down the middle of Elm Street or over this connector. So this project has me very interested because my encouragement to you would be to really study the abandoned rail corridors in Manchester and the Manchester City Plan, which outlines these. And I hope you know that this little segment that you're calling active corridor is the hub for literally 5 spokes that leave Manchester. And so if we don't do this right, we have nothing that connects in the whole city. And so we really need to be able to get the city out safely. We're taking what is currently abandoned rail corridor, which could, in 5 seconds, be turned into something that we call a rail trail. We're taking $25 million to turn it into something that we're calling a rail trail because we're putting a road over part of it. The part that's connecting from Gas Street to Willow is going over and actually, like, not just parallel to, but literally over in the same direction as what's currently you had beautiful pictures of what the abandoned rail corridor looks like, which used to be bramble and now it's nice grass because groups were in there clearing it to demonstrate that this is corridor. This is stuff we should be using. So I just can't emphasize how critical this section is and the connectivity. We cannot get it wrong. And it's part of the peanut. Getting from South Manchester Rail Trail over Queen City Ave into this little segment right there, which then, by the way, has the turnoff that goes and connects to the Rockingham all the way to the seacoast. And then gets us over, all the other spokes. So really important to get this right. And important for our kids.
Thank you. Amber.
Yeah, sorry, just as a teacher who has received the kids on the bike bus, I cannot emphasize enough the changes in their attention spans and ability to focus and work hard in school. I cannot emphasize that enough in seeing kids who were not on the bike bus and then were on the bike bus, and that's all I have to add there.
So we have all been feverishly scrawling things down as you've been talking, but there's no substitute for your voice. So in the room next door, there's a table next to every display. And that display... So, okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Jen. I'm going to leave us on a totally different note. I have never heard of a peanut roundabout, so I keep chuckling. So I think we need to solicit for new public art, and I'm going to counter James's proposal and suggest we have a Charlie Brown and the Peanuts characters there with an art, or a giant circus peanut. So.
Nobody likes circus peanuts.
All right. So there will be the project team is all going to be at their tables for another 20 minutes. And there's a chance for you to go right up to the tables next to them with your Post-its, and all of those ideas are great. Make sure you write down the things you mostly believe in or you most believe in, and post them on the posters next to the project elements. We want to hear all of those things beyond what we captured. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it.